When I say the letters IMF, what pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's this idea of a global financial safety net. But the sources we're digging into today, well, they paint a very different picture. And it all starts with a number that is just jaw-dropping.
Okay, get ready for this. $1.4 trillion. That is how much developing nations spent in just 1 year, 2023, servicing their foreign debt. Now, what's really wild about this number is what it doesn't even include.
Yep, you heard that right. We're talking about interest payments only. This doesn't even make a dent in the original loan amount. I mean, just think about that. This is money that could have been schools, roads, hospitals, but instead, poof, it vanished into the accounts of creditors.
So you have to ask, right? Who's at the center of this whole system? Well, the analysis we're looking at points a finger at one place, the International Monetary Fund. You know it as the IMF. So let's really get into how this thing works.
All right, first things first, we got to wrap our heads around just how big this problem is. We're talking about a huge debt crisis in the developing world. And it's not a one-off problem. It's a cycle, and a cycle that the source material says is almost impossible to break.
And the pattern is, well, it's pretty familiar. A country gets into trouble, runs out of cash. The IMF swoops in, promising to fix everything with a loan. But here's the catch. That loan isn't just cash. It comes with a whole rule book for how that country has to run its entire economy. And the result of all this? Right now, nearly 60% of all low-income countries are either in debt distress or teetering right on the edge.
So, was this always the plan? Was the IMF designed to do this from the start? Well, to figure that out, we need to rewind the clock a bit, back to when the IMF was first created and its mission looked a lot different.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1944. World War II is ending. Leaders from 44 countries get together at a place called Bretton Woods. Their goal? To create a new financial system so the world never has to go through another Great Depression. Now, at the exact same time, colonial empires are falling apart. You've got all these brand new independent nations popping up, but they're starting from scratch. Their economies have been hollowed out, the resources taken, so what choice do they have? They're forced to borrow money just to stand on their own 2 feet.
And that's where the IMF's original promise comes in. See, it was never supposed to be this permanent boss telling countries what to do forever. The whole idea was simple. Give a country a short-term loan to get through a rough patch. Just give them some breathing room to recover. But yeah, that whole temporary thing, it didn't last long. Fast forward to the 1980s, and bam, a massive global debt crisis just explodes. The IMF steps in again, naturally. But this time, according to the sources we're looking at, the rescue wasn't really a rescue. It came with, well, let's just say, much heavier chains. They had a name for it: Structural Adjustment Programs, or SAPs for short. Now, on paper, the goal sounded good. Promote growth, stabilize the economy, all that free market stuff. But the source material argues that these weren't just little tweaks for temporary relief. No, these were massive, top-to-bottom overhauls of a country's entire economic system. If you wanted the loan, you had to play by their rules and redesign everything according to a very, very specific checklist. And this checklist? It was a doozy. We're talking about devaluing your currency, making everything you import way more expensive. We're talking about deep, painful cuts to public spending, things like healthcare, education. You had to sell off your state-owned industries, privatize everything, get rid of any rules that protected your local businesses. Even the tax system was completely rewired, all for one main reason: to make absolutely sure those foreign debts got paid back no matter what.
And this is the heart of the argument right here. All those conditions created what's now known as the debt trap. The idea is that instead of helping a country get back on its feet and become independent, it actually did the opposite. It created this vicious cycle of dependency. A country could never really get out from under the IMF's thumb because they were always needing new loans just to deal with the mess the old loans created.
Okay, so that's the theory. But let's look at what happened in the real world. The sources point to this repeating pattern of crisis, this formula that was applied over and over again on different continents, but with results that were, well, eerily similar. Let's take Zambia as a case study. The numbers here are just, wow. Between 2018 and 2021, the chunk of their national budget going to paying back debt almost doubled. So you gotta ask, where did that money come from? Well, you can see it right there. Funding for healthcare dropped. Education dropped. It's a pretty clear picture. When debt repayments are number one, public services are the first thing on the chopping block. And listen, this wasn't just happening in Zambia, not by a long shot. Remember Russia after the Soviet Union fell? They got this IMF-backed plan called shock therapy. The result? One of the worst economic collapses of our time. Then you jump over to Argentina a decade later. The IMF pushes for all these privatizations, and what happens? A total meltdown in 2001. The currency just implodes, and millions of people fall into poverty. The source's point is clear. Same formula, just a different country on the map.
So this all leads to the big question, right? If these programs have such a, let's call it a checkered past, then who keeps making these decisions? Who's actually calling the shots at the IMF?
Well, according to the data, the answer is all in the voting structure. You see, the IMF might have almost 190 member countries, but power is anything but equal. Just look at this breakdown. The countries of the global north, the wealthier, industrialized nations, they control about 90% of the votes. That's 9 times more power than all the countries in the global south combined. We're talking most of Africa, Latin America, and developing Asia. But wait, it gets even more concentrated, because the sources point out that just one country, the United States, holds so much voting power that it effectively has a veto. Nothing major gets done at the IMF without its approval, period.
And that brings us to the final, really provocative question this whole analysis leaves us with. When you put it all together, the history, the policies, the lopsided power structure, you have to ask, is the IMF's main job really about saving struggling economies? Or, as this source suggests, is it actually about protecting the interests of the powerful few who already run the show?